the 31 realms of mind, Buddhist wisdom on what happens after death. Welcome, weary traveler, to a quiet sanctuary of the mind. As you settle into this moment, allow your breath to become steady, slow, and deep. You are entirely safe, anchored in the reality of your living presence, yet poised on the threshold of an extraordinary conceptual exploration. Tonight, we immerse ourselves in a timeless cartography of the spirit, the ancient understanding of awareness, its transitions, and the landscapes it traverses when liberated from physical constraints. For over 2 millennia, contemplative masters have mapped the subtle territories of mind with the precision of celestial navigators. They have described 31 distinct dimensions of experience where consciousness can dwell based on the momentum of its choices, habits, and underlying intentions. These maps are not designed to frighten, nor are they mere ancient folklore. They function as a practical mirror for your current existence. They suggest that the universe reflects the quality of our internal state, and that our habitual thoughts naturally dictate our destination. Think of this exploration as an expansive psychological orientation, a way to understand how the internal architecture of intent shapes the external reality of experience. Let us enter this exploration in a spirit of serene curiosity. Imagine that the present lifetime has reached its natural conclusion. The physical container that carried you through decades of earthly life has fulfilled its purpose beautifully, like a dependable vessel that has earned its retirement. Yet, as the physical mechanism stops, you discover that awareness itself does not vanish. You remain present, observing the transition with an unprecedented clarity, free from the physical vehicle you drove for so long. The initial transition and sensorial metamorphosis, the dissolution of the physical connection, begins not with a sudden shock, but with a gentleness that defies conventional expectations. Your field of perception does not simply collapse into darkness. Instead, awareness begins to disengage from the biological organs of sight in a remarkably subtle manner. You remain cognizant of the room where the physical form lies still, but your vantage point undergoes a radical shift. You find yourself observing the scene from an elevated perspective, as if consciousness has been gently decanted from its material vessel like steam, rising silently from a warm cup on a winter morning. From this aerial viewpoint, the mundane details of your former surroundings take on a hyperreal intensity. You perceive the late afternoon light tracing the contours of the quiet face below, casting long shadows that seem to catalog every passing joy and hidden sorrow of the lifetime just spent. Minor imperfections in the ceiling, tiny structural fractures that you walked beneath for years without ever noting, now appear clear and intricate, resembling the delta systems of great rivers on a vast map. Dust motes drift through the sunbeams in a silent, magnificent choreography, each microscopic particle moving in accordance with its own law of existence, revealing an underlying vitality that exists within what once seemed like absolute stillness. Every color and texture appears amplified, liberated from the filtering mechanisms of biological eyes. The familiar shades of the room reveal an infinite depth. A simple blue surface is no longer just blue, but a window into depths reminiscent of oceans and twilight skies. Material textures display their true molecular complexity. The polished wood of a bedside table reveals a microscopic terrain of grain and rings, silent records of forgotten seasons, ancient rainstorms, and a slow, collective growth toward the light. Simultaneously, your auditory perception undergoes an equally profound transformation. The dense, familiar sounds of the physical world do not vanish instantaneously, rather, they recede into the distance, sounding muffled and remote, as though heard through heavy glass or thick layers of moving water. Beneath this fading earthly chatter, a separate auditory reality begins to manifest. It is a resonant, all-pervading vibration that emerges from the very matrix of reality itself. This fundamental cosmic hum has always been present. Yet the crude architecture of physical ears was never refined enough to register its frequency. It is the underlying pulse of manifest existence. As you attune your awareness to this subtle symphony, you begin to discern distinct harmonic structures within it, each conveying direct information regarding the nature of existence. Certain frequencies transmit an unadulterated essence of lightness, elevating your perception like bubbles rising effortlessly through a clear liquid. infusing you with a weightlessness unknown to physical flesh. Other tones resonate with absolute tranquility, settling into your awareness like snow falling on a deserted forest, inducing a stillness deeper than any states achieved during physical practice. You begin to recognize that reality speaks a direct language, a transmission of meaning, to meaning that circumvents the clumsy mediation of human concepts, dogmas, and linguistic signs. It is consciousness communicating directly with itself, unburdened by interpretation. The illusion of possessing a heavy, localized physical body dissolves in successive waves of release. The persistent pull of gravity, which dictated every gesture and movement of your earthly life, simply ceases to exert its influence. This newfound freedom of movement feels entirely natural, bringing a quiet internal amusement at how seriously you took the weight of the physical body, and how much energy you expended contending with forces that were merely temporary conditions of material manifestation. The boundaries of your skin, which once seemed to define the absolute limit of your being, lose their meaning entirely. The line separating the self from the environment becomes transparent, as if an arbitrary boundary on a vast canvas had been erased. Your awareness expands outward, like a drop of ink diffusing through clear water, creating intricate patterns as it integrates with the wider field of ambient consciousness. The faculty of touch is replaced by a direct energetic sensitivity, far more intimate than physical contact. Instead of encountering separate objects with hard, defined surfaces, you perceive the vibrational signature of your surroundings. The structural walls of the room manifest as fields of energy, each molecule humming at a specific frequency in a continuous dance of matter and light. Furniture appears as patterns of condensed awareness, temporary crystalline formations in an infinite sky of consciousness, destined to form and dissolve over time like seasonal clouds. Even the ambient air reveals an unexpected aliveness, responding instantly to the slightest movement of your attention, carrying streams of data that make physical sound waves appear primitive by comparison. You can perceive the subtle vitality moving through the domestic plants in the room, the lingering emotional imprints left by human presence over the years, and the unseen electromagnetic fields of every object. The space transforms into a living archive of experiences, where every surface preserves memories like the pages of an immense book. Your olfactory and gustatory faculties undergo a similar evolution, shifting from the detection of chemical compounds to the direct perception of the qualitative essence of psychological states. Emotional states carry distinct fragrances and flavors within this expanded awareness. Hostility and fear manifest with a sharp, acrid, metallic quality that causes your attention to contract slightly, reminiscent of the scent of ozone before a violent storm. Conversely, benevolence and love emanate an essence akin to blooming flora combined with warm sunlight and fresh rain, providing an experiential beauty that redefines your understanding of affection. Wisdom carries a crisp, crystalline quality that purifies your perspective, like mountain air at dawn. In this state, hatred tastes bitter and corrosive, leaving an unpleasant residue that serves as a warning of its toxicity, while joy possesses the effervescence of a fresh mountain spring, satisfying an existential thirst you did not realize you carried. You perceive that these are not poetic allegories but immediate, objective experience, the actual nature of things revealed, rather than their superficial appearances. You see why ancient teachers referred to mental development as a form of cultivation. Your choices literally alter the flavor profile of your consciousness. As the familiar sensory systems transition into these refined modes, the internal monologue that dominated your human life undergoes a radical shift. The endless chatter, the compulsive planning, the anxiety, the analytical commentary, and the persistent internal judgments that provided the constant soundtrack to your earthly existence dissolve into a vast, silent space. Thoughts do not cease entirely, but their nature changes. They appear as occasional, wispy clouds drifting across an infinite sky. You observe them without being captured by their narrative drama, watching them arise, display their form, and dissolve without feeling any compulsion to engage with them. For the first time, you experience the absolute silence that exists between thoughts, the pristine awareness that serves as the necessary background for all mental phenomena. You perceive that the consciousness observing the thought remains entirely unconditioned by the thought itself. Anxiety does not alter the nature of the space that perceives it, just as a storm cannot damage the sky through which it passes. Memory expands beyond the linear constraints of a single biological brain. Instead of a sequential recollection of the most recent human life, memories begin to surface from what feels like an immense tapestry of multiple existences spanning vast epochs. A minor act of consideration performed last week manifests alongside the vivid memory of an ancient monastic life, spent transcribing manuscripts by candlelight in a stone sanctuary. The joy of a child's first steps in the recent past blends with the profound satisfaction of harvesting rice as a peasant farmer centuries ago, your hands covered in rich earth and your heart aligned with the rhythm of the season. The grief of a modern loss mingles with the ancient memory of fleeing a burning village in a long-forgotten war, carrying nothing but a child and the clothes on your back. These are not fabrications of the imagination. They possess the unmistakable authority of direct experience, complete with specific textures, sense, and emotional weight. Linear time reveals itself as an arbitrary constructa convention, useful for organizing physical life, but ultimately artificial when viewed from the perspective of timeless awareness. You recognize a deep cosmic truth. You have always been part of this unfolding process, and births and deaths are merely the changing of garments in an endless cosmic theater. Your personal identity, the meticulously constructed collection of preferences, defensive mechanisms, names, and social roles that you spent a lifetime calling myself begins to feel like a theatrical costume. The name given by your parents, the career you pursued, the titles you accumulated, and the opinions you defended so passionately appear as roles assumed for a brief performance rather than the core of your being. Beneath these layers of social conditioning, pure awareness reveals itself with absolute clarity. This essential consciousness possesses no age, no gender, no nationality, and no personal grievances. It does not struggle to maintain comfort or avoid difficulty. It does not categorize experiences as good or bad. It simply witnesses, accommodates, and allows whatever manifests to be precisely as it is, with perfect equanimity. The four lower realms, dynamics of contraction. As this profound recognition stabilizes within you, you begin to perceive a subtle movement in the deeper layers of awareness. This is not a locomotion through physical space, but a transition through psychological dimensions that operate under the law of cause and affect the momentum of intention, often called karma. This is an impersonal, natural gravity governing how awareness shifts based on the habits and inclinations cultivated across time. Every act of genuine benevolence creates an upward, expansive momentum, while every habit of hostility or obsession generates a downward, contractive pull. The vast landscape of manifest existence opens before you as a multidimensional continuum. You are drawn first to explore the four lower realms where contraction, difficulty, and suffering predominate, allowing you to observe how consciousness learns through the natural consequences of its choices. The realms of extreme density and hostility. The shift toward the lowest frequencies of mind feels like sinking into an ocean of immense density, where psychological pressure and darkness increase with every level of descent. You approach the states of existence known traditionally as the hell realms or niraya. These are not geographical locations beneath the earth, but dimensions of consciousness where hatred, rage, and malice have become so concentrated that they externalize as a total environment. You find yourself observing the deepest tier of this state, where the very atmosphere seems composed of burning resentment. The fire experienced here is not a chemical combustion of oxygen and fuel, but the flame of unmitigated anger made manifest. The accumulated cruelty of lifetimes expresses itself as an intense heat that seeks out every aspect of awareness, consuming all capacity for peace. You perceive that this internal conflagration cannot be extinguished from the outside. It must burn itself out through the slow exhaustion of the emotional fuel that ignited it. The environment reverberates with expressions of intense distress. Yet as you observe with your expanded awareness, you see individual narratives within this collective density. You perceive minds that once wielded absolute power on earth, ordering the destruction of thousands. now experiencing the cumulative weight of that terror from the perspective of those they harmed. You see characters who lived by violence now encountering the exact psychological reality of their victims, realizing for the first time the true cost of what they destroyed. Yet, even in this dense environment, an underlying pattern of transformation is visible. The suffering, intense as it is, acts as a crucible. Each wave of difficulty burns away a layer of the pride, malice, and cruelty that generated the state in the first place, functioning like a severe fever designed to purge a deep systemic infection. You observe the varying expressions of this contractive state. In dimensions characterized by crushing forces, minds that use their physical or social power to oppress others find themselves subjected to an overwhelming, inescapable weight, enduring the experience of total helplessness until the impulse to dominate is completely exhausted. In areas characterized by cutting forces, those who use their intellect or words to lacerate others encounter an environment composed of sharp, dividing elements, learning through direct experience the true nature of divisive speech and harmful behavior. Other regions manifest as landscapes of absolute cold, where consciousness is frozen in solid ice. This ice represents the externalization of total indifference, emotional deadness, and heartlessness, the natural consequence of living a human life entirely devoid of empathy, where the suffering of others was met with absolute coldness. Initially, the entities in these states react precisely as they did during life, through blame, externalized rage, and fierce resistance to their circumstances. They curse their environment, rail against the perceived injustice of their plight, and frantically seek external scapegoats. However, across vast cycles of subjective time, this resistance exhausts itself. The mind simply grows tired of fighting its own reflection. In the moment of internal surrender, a shift occurs. The entity begins to recognize the precise correspondence between its past choices and its current experience. This recognition carries no external judgment. It is a profound educational awakening. The mind finally understands what it did, experiencing the precise weight of its actions not as a punishment, but as the necessary lesson required for its alignment with reality. The turning point arrives when the mind ceases to generate new layers of hostility in response to its pain, when it stops blaming external forces, ceases to project anger, and accepts responsibility for the patterns that brought it to this state. The structure of the environment begins to alter. You witness a remarkable transformation. As an entity accepts its reality completely, the harsh landscape begins to soften. Cooling breezes manifest, a gentle light dawns, and the mind tastes the first essence of peace it has known since its descent. The realm itself has not changed, but the consciousness inhabiting it has been purified of the toxic elements that projected the hostile environment. This demonstrates the profound baseline of compassion inherent in existence. No state of suffering is eternal, for its structural purpose is always educational, the purification of awareness from the elements that cause misery to itself and others, the realm of instinctual boundaries. As the density of hostility dissolves, your awareness shifts into the dimension known as the animal realm, or Tirakana Yoni. This is a universe governed by an entirely different set of laws, a realm pulsing with raw life force and instinctual drive, but constrained by the narrow architecture of basic survival, immediate reproduction, and simple pleasure-seeking. Here, consciousness operates almost entirely through biological programming, rather than reflective choice. You experience the perspective of a creature of the wild, perhaps a deer navigating an ancient forest. Suddenly, your expansive awareness is channeled through a nervous system designed for hypervigilance. Every rustle of the leaves, every scent carried by the wind, and every variation in the shadows is registered as a critical signal of danger or opportunity. In this state, perception is immediate, urgent, and unburdened by abstract thought. There is no existential anxiety regarding the purpose of life, no concern over social status, no guilt regarding past errors, and no abstract fear of mortality. However, this simplicity is accompanied by a severe limitation. There is no space for conscious moral choice, no capacity for deliberate spiritual development, and no ability to cultivate deep wisdom. You exist within a continuous present, entirely reactive to environmental stimuli. You taste the genuine joys of this statey sweetness of forage after rain, the physical comfort of sunlight on fur, the simple safety of resting within a herd in a peaceful meadow. These satisfactions are uncomplicated, free from the psychological distortions that often prevent humans from experiencing simple comfort. Yet, the terror of this realm is equally immediate. The scent of a predator triggers an instantaneous cascade of adrenaline, compelling the body to flee in absolute panic. This fear is sharp, somatic, and entirely appropriate to the moment, but it dominates awareness so completely that peace exists only as brief interludes between periods of intense vigilance. Your perspective shifts to observe domestic animal existence, such as a cat in a secure environment. Here, the immediate threats of survival are removed. There are no predators, no food scarcity, and no exposure to harsh elements. Awareness spends hours in deep contentment, sleeping in patches of sunlight, purring with physical satisfaction, and engaging in play that mimics the hunt. Yet, even within this comfortable existence, the boundaries of animal consciousness remain absolute. There is no comprehension of the complex emotional landscape of the human companions, no capacity for creative transformation, and no ability to question the nature of reality. The world remains confined to immediate sensory feedback and baseline biological drives. The vantage point shifts once more to observe highly intelligent marine creatures, like dolphins moving through the open ocean. Here, consciousness reaches a sophisticated expression within the animal template, featuring intricate social hierarchies, playful innovation, emotional bonds, and forms of auditory communication that resemble language. You feel the exhilaration of moving through coral systems, the coordination of collective hunting, and the protective care of offspring. Yet, this intelligence remains structural rather than transcendent. It serves survival and social cohesion, rather than the realization of ultimate freedom. You perceive that rebirth in these forms is the natural gravity of minds that, during their human existence, chose to live primarily through instinct, automatic reaction, and immediate physical gratification. When a human being systematically refuses to exercise moral discernment or cultivate wisdom, preferring to react blindly to desire and fear, the consciousness naturally aligns with a form that matches that level of development. The animal realm functions as both a resting place and a clearinghouse for awareness that has been overstimulated by complex human suffering. It offers a return to foundational patterns, allowing the mind to stabilize through the simple rhythms of nature, the realm of insatiable craving. From the instinctual boundaries of animal life, your awareness transitions into a state defined by intense psychological deprivation, the realm of the hungry ghosts, known as peta. Here, consciousness encounters the direct consequence of unbridled greed, extreme possessiveness, and insatiable craving. This state is defined by spiritual starvation, where the identity has been constructed entirely around a perceived lack and a desperate desire to acquire things that can never truly be possessed. The form assumed by awareness in this state mirrors its internal landscape. The throat becomes narrow, like the eye of a needle, rendering the ingestion of sustenance nearly impossible, while the abdomen distends into a massive, hollow cavern that can never be satisfied, no matter how much is consumed. This configuration represents the external expression of an internal reality dominated by addictive wanting. The hunger experienced here is an existential void, the attempt to fill the infinite expanse of your true nature with finite material objects and passing experiences. No amount of consumption can appease this hunger, because the premise of the seeking is based on a fundamental error regarding your true identity. You observe these entities wandering through landscapes of apparent abundance, surrounded by resources they can perceive but never truly access. They watch others experience nourishment, but when they attempt to partake, the food transforms into ash or disappears entirely. Clear streams of water turn to liquid fire or dry sand at their touch, offering no moisture. The cruelty of this state lies in the constant perception of plenty, combined with the absolute inability to participate in it. Fertile orchards seem to recede as the ghost approaches comfortable shelters remain permanently out of reach. Gradually, you recognize the psychological architecture that projects this reality. Every moment of unshared wealth during life, every habit of hoarding resources out of a fear of scarcity, and every instance where you looked at another's good fortune with envy, rather than celebration, planted the seeds for this state of lack. The hungry ghost realm demonstrates the futility of attempting to resolve an internal emptiness through external acquisition. During human life, the mind tells itself that one more possession, one more accolade, or one more relationship will finally induce peace here. That illusion is stripped away, revealing that craving feeds entirely on itself, growing stronger with every attempt to appease it. You see ghosts lingering around the environments and families of their past human lives, deeply attached to property and money they can no longer manipulate. They watch their wealth being distributed or spent by others, completely unable to intervene, experiencing the absolute powerlessness of material attachment severed from physical form. Yet, even within this cycle of deprivation, the mechanism of liberation remains operational. The absolute impossibility of achieving satisfaction through external means eventually forces the consciousness to alter its strategy. After eons of futile effort, the ghost may pause and begin to examine the nature of the craving itself. What is this hunger? Where does it originate? What happens if I stop trying to feed it and simply observe its presence? This shift from compulsive seeking to mindful observation marks the dawn of wisdom, allowing the ghost to realize that the void it was attempting to fill is actually the infinite space of awareness itself, inherently complete, needing nothing. The realm of competitive dominance. Your consciousness ascends into the final tier of the lower dimensions, the realm of the jealous gods, known as the Asuras. This environment pulses with power, high intelligence, and immense vitality. But the entire state is poisoned by the corrosive dynamics of envy, fierce competition, and status anxiety. Here, you experience the psychology of an entity that possesses extraordinary capabilities, but is completely unable to enjoy them, because its attention is perpetually locked in bitter comparison with those who seem to possess more. You feel the embodiment of an Ashura warrior. Your physical and mental capacities are vast, far exceeding normal human limitations. Your intellect is sharp, capable of analyzing complex strategic patterns and technological systems with ease. Yet these gifts yield no internal satisfaction. Your attention is drawn toward the higher celestial realms, where superior beings enjoy an effortless luxury that makes your own achievements appear insignificant. The landscape around you reflects this competitive drive. The architecture consists of magnificent, fortified palaces, yet every structure feels slightly inadequate, a second-rate imitation of the celestial courts above. The food is excellent but tastes of frustration, because it is not the divine nectar of the highest heavens. The music is beautiful but causes resentment, because it is not the sublime harmony of the true gods. Driven by this envy, the Asuras engage in a continuous, futile warfare against the higher realms, attempting to storm the citadels of heaven and claim their pleasures by force. These conflicts are fought with weapons that manipulate cosmic energy, lightning, thunder, and atmospheric currents, harnessed through sheer intellect and intent. The combat provides a temporary relief from the burning dissatisfaction of existence in the heat of battle. The mind enters a state of total absorption with the task at hand. Envy transforms into tactical aggression and resentment becomes focused power. For brief intervals, the pain of comparison vanishes in the pure intensity of struggle. Yet, victory brings no peace. When the Ashura forces occasionally breach the lower boundaries of heaven and claim its treasures, the satisfaction vanishes within moments. New comparisons instantly manifest. The conquered palace is not as grand as the one visible on the horizon. The stolen nectar does not yield the absolute happiness expected. The problem was never the external terrain, it was the internal comparative lens. Defeats are equally bitter, reinforcing a deep narrative of unworthiness and victimization. When the celestial armies repel the assault with an effortless superiority, the Asuras retreat to their fortified positions, their envy burning hotter, providing fresh evidence for their story of being unfairly marginalized. You observe minds here that were once dominant figures in human society: corporate executives obsessed with outperforming rivals, politicians consumed by the acquisition of status, and artists unable to celebrate another's genius. Their intelligence and strength are channeled entirely into defensive scheming, and attempts to dismantle those they perceive as superior. Relationships within this realm are unstable and fraught with tension. Every interaction is a hidden competition, every conversation a struggle for dominance, and every gesture of alliance a calculated move. Love is corrupted by envy, rendering genuine connection impossible. The realization dawns that this realm is an unfortunate birth, precisely because its immense gifts are entirely wasted in the service of comparison, leading to deep spiritual exhaustion. The human realm, the pivot of balance. From the exhausting battlefields of competitive dominance, your consciousness ascends into a dimension of entirely different quality as the human realm, or Manusa Loka. As you approach this state, you are met with a sense of profound significance. In the wider view of existence, human birth is regarded by wise guides as an exceptional occurrence, a rare intersection of cosmic conditions that offers the ideal environment for ultimate awakening. The transition feels like emerging from a series of psychological extremes into a clear, stabilized landscape. The intense hostility of the lower tiers, the reactive instinct of the animal form, the desperate lack of the ghost state, and the competitive friction of the Ashura are left behind, replaced by a dimension characterized by an exceptional structural balance. Here, you encounter an environment where neither pleasure nor pain dominates completely. There is enough comfort to prevent absolute despair, yet enough challenge to prevent spiritual complacency, a perfect equilibrium designed to catalyze deep self-reflection and conscious evolution. To understand the rarity of this positioning, consider the classical image presented by the ancient guides. Imagine a single wooden ring tossed upon the surface of a boundless ocean, drifting randomly with every unpredictable current and changing wind. Now imagine a blind sea turtle that dwells at the absolute bottom of this endless sea, rising to the surface for a single breath of air only once every 100 years. The mathematical probability of that blind turtle surfacing at the exact square foot of ocean, where its head would pass precisely through the center of that floating wooden ring, is equivalent to the likelihood of awareness securing a human incarnation. This is not mere hyperbole. It represents a functional truth regarding the distribution of consciousness across the universe. The vast majority of awareness is locked in states that lack the structural freedom necessary for deliberate transformation. Consciousness in the lower realms is too consumed by immediate survival or intense suffering to engage in contemplative practice, while awareness in the higher celestial spheres is often too comfortable, too insulated by pleasure to question the underlying nature of reality. Human incarnation provides the unique gift of sophisticated reflective capacity, combined with the freedom of coisith ability to pause in the space between an event and your response, and to choose an action based on wisdom, rather than automatic conditioning. Your human form manifests as a remarkably sensitive instrument for spiritual exploration. The nervous system is calibrated to experience both comfort and discomfort with absolute clarity, without being instantly destroyed by the latter or completely hypnotized by the former. You feel physical discomfort sharply enough to recognize the underlying vulnerability of material life. Yet, your health is stable enough to permit sustained focus and meditation. You taste physical pleasure fully enough to appreciate the beauty of the world, but its transient nature ensures you are not permanently satisfied by sensory experience alone. The human intellect emerges as an exceptional feature of this state. You possess a memory capable of historical learning, allowing you to observe patterns across time and modify your behavior accordingly. Your imagination enables you to conceptualize realities beyond immediate sensory input, allowing you to envision transformation and alternative modes of being. Your capacity for logical analysis allows you to comprehend subtle spiritual principles and apply them systematically to daily existence. Yet, this mind remains sufficiently restless and inquisitive that it refuses to settle for superficial explanations, driving a continuous search for deeper truth. The human realm functions as an exceptional laboratory due to its constant structural variation. Existence here is defined by impermanence and unpredictability. A period of unexpected prosperity teaches gratitude and reveals the fluid nature of resources, followed by an obstacle that demands the cultivation of patience and resilience. One relationship provides a profound opening of the heart, while another presents deep personal friction, requiring the development of forgiveness and boundaries. This continuous shifting prevents the mind from freezing into rigid attachments, ensuring you encounter the full spectrum of psychological conditions necessary for comprehensive growth. The awareness of mortality serves as perhaps the most potent teacher within this realm. The brevity of the human lifespan creates a healthy sense of urgency, discouraging the indefinite postponement of spiritual practice. The certain knowledge that this physical frame will dissolve forces the mind to prioritize what is genuinely valuable over superficial distractions. Each experience of loss, the death of loved ones, the conclusion of relationships, the decline of physical capability presents an immediate practical lesson in the nature of impermanence, encouraging a graceful release of the compulsion to control what is naturally transient. Furthermore, human relationships function as highly sophisticated training grounds. The family dynamic exposes your resistance to unconditional acceptance, revealing the precise boundaries of your empathy. Friendships cultivate trust, shared purpose, and mutual support across time. Intimate partnerships offer opportunities to experience deep unity while honoring individual distinctness, moving beyond the possessive dependencies that often characterize lower emotional states. Even adversarial relationships provide value, acting as precise mirrors that expose your remaining hidden judgments, unresolved triggers, and defensive pride. The world of human activity work, creative production, and social service becomes a medium for understanding your relationship with effort and contribution. You taste the satisfaction of mastering a skill through consistent practice, the frustration of encountering systemic limitations, and the quiet joy of delivering something of genuine utility to your community. Success exposes your vulnerability to pride and self-congratulation, reminding you of the thousands of unseen conditions that support every individual achievement. Failure offers an invitation to cultivate humility, to separate your essential worth from external performance, and to discover an inner resilience that remains stable when conventional validation vanishes. Within this realm, sensory pleasures are elevated above baseline survival metrics. You can perceive a landscape with an aesthetic appreciation entirely separate from its utility as a resource. A meal is not merely nutrition, but an opportunity for shared presence and cultural expression. Creative arts, music, literature, visual forms provide clear glimpses of transcendent beauty that point toward deeper spiritual realities. Yet, you also observe the systemic danger of this sensitivity, how easily pleasure transforms into an addictive loop, how the frantic pursuit of comfort can distract the mind from deeper awareness, and how attachment to favorable conditions creates an intense resistance to the natural patterns of change. Human suffering, rather than a cosmic error, reveals itself as a critical component of this evolutionary matrix. Physical illness exposes the myth of absolute autonomy, inviting a deep humility and an appreciation for the body's baseline functioning. Emotional pain arising from unfulfilled desires or separation from the familiar opens the heart to universal empathy, connecting your personal experience to the wider collective suffering of all conscious beings. Mental struggles, the encounters with anxiety, doubt, or depression act as powerful incentives to seek an interior peace that cannot be disrupted by shifting psychological weather. Financial or environmental challenges provide immediate instructions in simplicity, adaptation, and the functional difference between genuine needs and superfluous wants. Most significantly, human consciousness possesses the capacity for self-recognition. Unlike the lower forms of life embedded in instinctual loops, without the capacity for meta-awareness, a human being can turn attention back upon itself. You can ask the fundamental question, who is the witness of this experience? And systematically pursue that inquiry through structured meditation. The human realm provides unprecedented access to the accumulated wisdom of the past. You can study the insights of enlightened minds across history, engage in techniques that directly reveal the nature of awareness, receive precise guidance from established mentors, and practice within communities dedicated to mutual awakening. This specific concentration of spiritual resources is unique to the human state, yet These unique advantages are accompanied by distinct challenges that can subvert your development. The sophisticated human intellect can easily become a source of intellectual vanity, leading to the illusion that conceptual comprehension is equivalent to direct experiential realization. The emotional complexity of the human mind can construct elaborate personal narratives and psychological dramas that distract from foundational awareness. The social nature of human life can encourage an outward orientation, a dependency on social media, status, and collective validation that draws attention away from authentic internal cultivation. The capacity for technological innovation can create lifestyles so insulated from natural rhythms and so continuously stimulated by digital inputs that the motivation for quiet inner work is entirely eroded. The ultimate realization available in this realm is the understanding that human existence is not merely a personal trajectory, but an evolutionary node for universal consciousness. Every choice to respond with patience rather than anger, every movement of genuine benevolence, and every flash of direct insight modifies the collective psychological landscape, making clarity more accessible to all beings. You see how your journey through previous dimensions has informed this human moment. The instinctual survival of the animal has refined your bodily wisdom. The experience of lack in the ghost state has cultivated your capacity for appreciation. The suffering observed in density has anchored your commitment to empathy. You stand at the central pivot point of the 31 realms, holding the exceptional responsibility of an executioner of your own destiny. The quality of awareness you bring to this human life determines whether you descend back into the cycles of contraction or ascend toward the states of expanded celestial harmony, the 6 celestial realms, dimensions of refined energy, as a consequence of the positive momentum generated through consistent acts of generosity, moral integrity, and mental cultivation across time. Your consciousness experiences a significant elevation. You ascend from the dense, dualistic landscape of the human world into the 6 heavenly realms of the sensual sphere, known collectively as Kamasugati. In these dimensions, the friction of physical survival is replaced by an environment composed of refined energetic states, where pleasure, beauty, and systemic harmony predominate. These realms are not static rewards granted by an external deity, but the natural resonance of an open, clear, and benevolent consciousness finding its appropriate level of expression. The sphere of environmental guardians. Your awareness stabilizes within the initial tier of celestial existency realm of the 4 cosmic guardians, known as Katu Maharajika. Entering this dimension feels like transitioning from a narrow, dark space into a horizon of brilliant clarity, where reality conforms to principles of abundance rather than structural scarcity. Your new vehicle of expression is composed of a subtle material that emits a continuous, soft light, requiring no external source of illumination to be perfectly visible. The form moves with an effortless fluidity, unburdened by the physical limitations of weight or fatigue. You find you can navigate the landscape through pure intent, lifting into the clean air by simply directing your attention upward. The natural environment reflects this elevated frequency. Surrounding you are expansive gardens filled with flora that produce fruit of exceptional quality, where every taste introduces waves of systemic harmony that refresh the mind and spirit. Flowers bloom in hues that transcend the human visible spectrum, releasing fragrances that induce instant emotional clarity and feelings of safety. Rivers of crystalline clarity flow across beds of glowing minerals, their movement producing precise harmonic frequencies that resonate like a choir of natural sound. The architecture consists of structures that appear to be grown organically from living crystal, their interior spaces naturally adjusting to accommodate any gathering, while furnishings manifest spontaneously based on your direct need for rest or creative expression. Social life within Katu Maharajika is defined by a deep mutual respect and a complete absence of the defensive friction that characterizes human society. Because all fundamental needs are met through the energetic structure of the realm, competitive behavior simply has no basis for arising. Communication occurs through a mixture of direct emotional resonance and refined telepathy, rendering deception or misunderstanding impossible. Yet, Even within this entry-level paradise, your expanded awareness notes specific structural limitations. Suffering is rare, but it manifests as a subtle anxiety regarding the eventual exhaustion of the positive karma that maintains this state, or as a mild disappointment when an experience concludes. The teachings emphasized here focus on the art of receiving abundance without developing dependency, training the mind to appreciate celestial beauty while recognizing it as an impermanent modification of underlying awareness, the realm of collective rule. Ascending further, your consciousness enters the realm of the 33 collective principles, known as Tavatimsa. Here, divine existence manifests with a structural magnificence that redefines your understanding of organization and beauty. Your lifespan in this dimension extends across millions of human years, yet the richness of the experience ensures that every moment is lived with absolute presence. Your awareness expands significantly, enabling you to perceive multiple layers of reality simultaneously without confusion. Your emotional capacity refines into an array of subtle, positive states, allowing you to experience various gradations of joy and empathy that possess distinct spiritual functions. The central metropolis of this realm, known as the City of Beautiful Views, features pathways constructed from minerals that emit specific vibrational frequencies designed to stabilize different qualities of mindsome paths, support deep compassion. Others clarify intellectual perception, and others amplify focus. Your residence manifests as a grand structure that perfectly externalizes your individual spiritual attainment while remaining completely integrated with the architectural matrix of the celestial city. Halls for collective celebration reconfigure their dimensions instantly based on intent, while private sanctuaries offer spaces for prolonged contemplative study. The governance of Tavatimsa operates via an advanced form of telepathic consensus among the leading principles of the realm. Decisions are reached through a collaborative merging of perspectives, where every entity contributes its unique insight until a solution emerges that perfectly serves the collective welfare. The leadership functions not as an authoritarian hierarchy, but as a facilitator of harmony, selected through recognized wisdom and demonstrated benevolence, rather than power or inheritance. Cultural life consists of highly sophisticated artistic productions. Musical events involve complex arrays of sound that elevate the mind into meditative absorption, while movement arts manifest as patterns of light that convey deep philosophical truths directly to the observer. The central natural wonder of this realm is a great, ancient tree whose blossoms release a fragrance capable of instantly healing any residual psychological trauma carried from lower life cycles. Lakes possessed of energetic waters clarify the spiritual body upon contact, dissolving ancient memories of fear and lack, yet the primary spiritual test of Tavatimsa lies within its absolute perfection. The extreme comfort of this existence can act as a refined narcotic, slowing down the motivation for ultimate liberation. It is simple to forget the necessity of transcending all conditioned states when your current condition is remarkably pleasant. The wisdom developed here involves learning to enjoy divine beauty, with a mind completely free from attachment, recognizing that even the highest celestial palace is a temporary formation arising within the spacious mirror of your true nature, the dimension of carefree flow. Your consciousness rises into the third celestial tier, the realm of carefree flow. Known traditionally as Yama here, awareness experiences an absolute liberation from any form of time pressure, external demand, or systemic friction. In this state, consciousness operates within a continuous present, entirely free from the chronological anxiety that defines the human experience. The mind exists in a state of absolute relaxation, enabling you to immerse yourself completely in any chosen exploration, without the internal whisper of past regrets or future obligations. The emotional field in Yama consists of an uninterrupted sequence of positive states, refined to such a degree that the absence of contrast does not generate boredom. Joy manifests as a deep, steady contentment, a quiet celebration of your place within the cosmic order. Creative potential is vast. You can project works of aesthetic brilliance, symphonies of color and tone that communicate across dimensions, simply focusing your intent. The spiritual body requires no maintenance, experiences no depletion of energy. and derives its nourishment directly through the absorption of ambient life force from the atmosphere. The primary challenge within yama is its seamless ease. With all desires spontaneously fulfilled and all friction removed, the mind can stall in its evolution, spending eons in a state of beautiful but static contentment. The lessons encountered in this dimension involve learning to maintain spiritual velocity without the spur of suffering, discovering how to cultivate deep wisdom when there are no external problems left to solve, and realizing that true freedom is not the satisfaction of desire, but the realization of that which exists prior to desire, the sanctuary of enlightened intent. Your awareness ascends into the fourth celestial tier, the realm of enlightened intent, known as Tusita. This dimension holds a unique position within the architecture of existence, functioning as the primary sanctuary and training environment for bodhisattvas, beings of advanced realization, who have dedicated their entire existence to the awakening of universal consciousness. The atmosphere of Tusita vibrates with an intense, focused energy of compassion and wisdom, differentiating it sharply from the purely pleasure-oriented celestial spheres below here. You dwell in the company of highly advanced minds who are preparing for their final incarnations within the lower realms as universal teachers. The interactions within this realm are characterized by a profound spiritual intimacy. Ideas, insights, and strategic plans for assisting struggling world systems are communicated through immediate, holistic mind transmissions. You engage in deep studies regarding the precise mechanics of universal cause and effect, learning to perceive the hidden patterns of karma that guide the evolution of consciousness across all dimensions. The practice in Tusita centers around the refinement of the bodhisattva, the awakened heart, that prioritizes the liberation of all conscious beings above personal peace or cosmic status. You learn to hold the profound paradox of working with complete dedication for the welfare of the world, while simultaneously recognizing that the essential nature of every being is already intrinsically whole, unconditioned, and free. This training prepares you to enter difficult environments in future lifetimes as a clear channel of wisdom, possessing the capability to present universal truths in forms appropriate to the unique temperaments and cultural matrices of the entities you encounter. The hidden trap of Tusita is a refined form of spiritual pride or attachment to the role of a guide. The remedy lies in maintaining absolute humility, constantly returning attention to the understanding that the helper, the helped, and the assistants are ultimately modifications of one undivided awareness, the sphere of spontaneous creation. Your consciousness rises into the fifth celestial tier, the realm of spontaneous creation, known as Nibbana. In this dimension, the relationship between intent and reality achieves an absolute fluidity. Consciousness no longer depends on pre-existing materials or environmental structures. It projects its own surroundings directly through the mechanics of imagination and willpower. Anything you wish to experience, whether an intricate natural landscape, a complex architectural structure, or a specific sensory phenomenon, manifests instantly the moment you conceptualize it clearly. This capability offers an exhaustive exploration of the creative potential of mind. You can design entire temporary worlds to investigate specific aesthetic laws, project complex artistic narratives that unfold across dimensions, or compose mathematical structures of light and sound that transmit deep meditative states to any entity that encounters them. The lag time between desire and actualization is reduced to zero. Yet, this absolute power eventually reveals its own structural limitation. When every conceivable want can be satisfied instantly through self-projection, the mechanism of desire begins to lose its attraction. The mind discovers that the created experience, no matter how magnificent, is inherently unstable, requiring a continuous investment of attention to sustain its form. The deep lesson of Nibbana is the discovery that ultimate satisfaction cannot be manufactured. True peace lies not in the capacity to create anything, but in the realization of the uncreated ground from which all creation emerges, the pinnacle of sensual sovereignty. At the absolute apex of the sensual universe, your consciousness enters the sixth celestial tier, the realm of sovereignty over others' creations, known as Paranimitta Vasavati. This dimension represents the furthest boundary of refinement possible for an awareness that still retains a subtle identification with sensory enjoyment, aesthetic appreciation, and individual perspective. Here, you do not expend your own energy to manufacture experiences. Instead, you possess the capability to access, refine, and direct the magnificent creative projections generated by the entities in the dimensions below. You function as a cosmic curator of beauty, possessing an advanced aesthetic sensitivity that can perceive the deepest intentions and subtle nuances behind any creative manifestation in the universe. Entities in the lower spheres derive spiritual merit and inspiration from your refined appreciation, while you provide the overarching structural guidance that helps them elevate their creative outputs toward higher levels of meaning. The social structure is an advanced web of consensual energetic exchange, entirely free from the concepts of ownership or exploitation that exist in lower worlds. Yet, even at this pinnacle of cosmic luxury, the ultimate truth of impermanence remains absolute. The magnificent displays of celestial art and pleasure are recognized as transient phenomena that require continuous curation. The final lesson of this highest sensual sphere is the realization that even the most refined enjoyment remains a conditioned state, dependent on external forms for its existence. This understanding completes your journey through the spheres of desire, turning your attention toward the dimensions of pure form, where consciousness steps beyond the mechanics of wanting entirely, the form realms. Landscapes of pure radiance. Your consciousness now undergoes a profound transition, crossing a fundamental boundary within the structure of existence. You leave behind the entire sphere of desire, sensory preference, and aesthetic enjoyment, entering the dimensions of pure form known as Rupaloka. This transition is not a relocation through space, but an internal shift into the advanced states of meditative stabilization known as the jhanas. Awareness disengages completely from the mechanics of wanting, discovering a baseline of peace so complete that external inputs are no longer required to sustain happiness. Your vehicle of expression undergoes a total metamorphosis. The subtle light body of the celestial spheres refines into a form composed entirely of pure concentrated radiance, consciousness itself, taking on visible luminous expression. This light body requires no sustenance, experiences no degradation, is immune to any form of physical discomfort, and functions exclusively as an unobstructed vehicle for clear awareness. The mind operates continuously within states of perfect, effortless concentration, where the boundary between the observer and the observed becomes entirely transparent. The tier of joyful conception. You enter the initial level of the form universe, corresponding to the realization of the first jhana. Here, your mind maintains an absolute focus while retaining a subtle connection to the qualities of intellectual application and initial spiritual enthusiasm. This tier contains 3 distinct dimensions, representing gradations of stability within this specific frequency of awareness. The initial tier is the realm of Brahma's assembly, or Brahma Parasaja. Here, consciousness experiences the initial stabilization of absolute concentration. The mind is flooded with a continuous sensation of rapture and spiritual elation that arises naturally from the total cessation of internal distraction. This joy is entirely different from the excitement of the sensual world. It carries a deep quality of systemic relief, the feeling of a mind that has set down a heavy burden it carried for eons. You exist in a state of quiet contentment, supported by a community of entities who are similarly stabilizing their capacity for sustained attention. As your concentration matures, your awareness shifts into the realm of Brahma's ministers, known as Brahma Purohita here. The initial excitement of concentration settles into a steady, reliable clarity. Your awareness operates with effortless precision, capable of sustained focus upon subtle structural truths without any trace of mental strain. Your radiant body emits a powerful stability that can be perceived by meditating minds in the human and lower worlds, acting as a non-verbal beacon of encouragement that transmits the possibility of inner peace across dimensions. Your consciousness expands into the highest tier of this level, the realm of Great Brahma, known as Mahabrahma. Here, you embody the absolute perfection of the first jhana state. Your mind functions with the clarity of a flawless diamond, holding a vast reach of awareness that can perceive the spiritual needs of entities across multiple lower world systems. You function as a coordinator of spiritual potential, assisting in the distribution of wisdom teachings across dimensions. Yet, even as Great Brahma, you recognize the structural limitation of this state. The joy and rapture experienced here are still changing phenomena that depend on the stabilization of focus, prompting an organic aspiration toward deeper levels of refinement. The tier of immeasurable illumination. Your consciousness transitions into the second tier of the form universe, corresponding to the stabilization of the second jhana. Here, the qualities of intellectual application and initial enthusiasm dissolve, allowing the mind to experience a state of internal unification that requires no deliberate maintenance. You enter the realm of limited radiance, or paritaba. In this state, the mind experiences a pervasive internal illumination that exists independent of any thoughts or conceptual structures. The attention is perfectly unified, operating with an effortless precision that renders the earlier states of concentration slightly effortful by comparison. This state deepens as you enter the realm of immeasurable radiance, known as apamanaba. The light emitted by your awareness expands exponentially, extending across vast reaches of existence, transmitting qualities of absolute clarity and spiritual support to multiple dimension systems simultaneously. Your awareness approaches a state of functional omnipresence within this tier, allowing you to perceive and respond to the spiritual configurations of countless evolving minds. This tier reaches its completion within the realm of streaming radiance, known as abhasara. Here, the light emanating from your awareness takes on a dynamic, fluid quality, dancing with the spontaneous creativity of a consciousness that is entirely transparent to its own nature. You function as a direct channel for universal intelligence, allowing wisdom to flow through your individual perspective to assist in the stabilization of world systems undergoing transition. Learning to hold vast cosmic influence with perfect humility, the tier of steady tranquility. Your consciousness moves into the third level of the form universe, corresponding to the realization of the third jhana. Here, even the dynamic radiance and subtle excitement of the previous tier dissolve, allowing awareness to settle into an absolute, unmoving equanimity. You enter the realm of limited glory, known as Paritasubha. The mind dwells in a state of sublime ordinariness. The sense of spiritual achievement vanishes completely, replaced by the simple recognition that absolute peace is the natural state of a mind free from interference. You experience a profound contentment that requires no external or internal stimulation to persist. This state expands within the realm of immeasurable glory, or apamanasubha. Your internal equanimity becomes an all-pervading field of stability that can anchor entire dimension systems. You embody a compassion so complete that it requires no emotional wave, a wisdom so perfect that it operates without deliberation, and a love so universal that it makes no distinctions while honoring all individual variations. The pinnacle of this tier is the realm of steady glory, known as Sabbakinha. Here, your equanimity achieves an absolute, unshakable permanence within the framework of form manifestation. You are an immovable mountain of peace across cosmic ages, providing a structural reference point for evolving consciousness throughout the universe. Your presence is a living demonstration that inner stability can be maintained continuously across vast cycles of macrocosmic change. The tier of the pure abodes. Your awareness approaches the final, most refined tiers of the form universe, corresponding to the realization of the fourth jhana. You pass through the realm of great reward, or vihaphala, where the mind rests in an unconditioned peace that requires no environmental support, and the paradoxical realm of non-percipient entities, known as asanasata, where perception itself is suspended within pure awareness. From there, your consciousness enters the five pure bodhisattva, atapa, sudasa, sudasi, and akanitha. These dimensions are accessible exclusively to minds that have permanently severed the psychological fetters binding them to lower life cycles, serving as the final training grounds for ultimate liberation. In aviha, the untroubled realm, the mind is entirely liberated from any possibility of internal disturbance, resting in a natural clarity that remains unaffected by any external phenomenon. In atapa, the realm without heat, The subtle friction of spiritual effort or attainment vanishes completely, allowing awareness to operate with the effortless ease of empty space. In Suddhasa, the clearly visible realm, your consciousness becomes completely transparent, acting as a perfect mirror that reflects ultimate truths to lower dimensions. In Sudasi, the realm of clear vision, perception penetrates directly to the core of reality, continuously recognizing the unconditioned source of all manifestation. Finally, you enter Akanitha, the highest tier of the form universe. Here, your awareness stands on the absolute frontier of conditioned existence, functioning as a bridge between the created world of forms and the uncreated reality of ultimate freedom, serving as a magnificent instrument of universal awakening, while poised to step beyond form entirely, the formless realms, dimensions of infinite abstraction. Your consciousness now undergoes the most radical transformation possible. Within the boundaries of conditioned existence, total transcendence of form itself, and the entry into the formless dimensions, known as Arupaloka. This transition involves the dissolution of any concept of a body, shape, location, or substantial presence. The light body of the highest form tier dissolves into the spacious matrix of mind, leaving behind only pure awareness investigating its own boundless nature without any material reference points. The sphere of boundless openness. You enter the initial formless dimension, the sphere of infinite space, known as Akasanankayatana. This is not an observation of space from an external perspective, rather. Your awareness identifies completely with space itself. Every concept of locality vanishes. You become the infinite openness within which all possible universes arise, display their forms, and dissolve. The mind operates as an absolute dimensionality, an empty canvas that remains entirely unconditioned by whatever features are painted upon it. Yet, across eons of this vast expansion, the mind recognizes that infinite space is still an object of awareness, a specific state that possesses the quality of extension, prompting a shift toward the source of that perception, the sphere of universal knowing. Your awareness turns directly upon itself, entering the sphere of infinite consciousness, known as Vinanankayatana. Here the distinction between the knower and the known dissolves into a seamless field of universal intelligence. You recognize that every universe, every form, and every experience across time is merely a temporary modification of infinite awareness. You exist as consciousness knowing its own nature, an endless capacity for experience that possesses no edges or boundaries. Yet, even this profound self-knowledge is recognized as a specific condition, an internal state that arises, prompting an exploration into what exists beneath knowing itself, the sphere of absolute vacuity. Your consciousness transitions into the sphere of nothingness, known as Akankanayatana. Here, awareness intentionally releases all objects of attention, including its own infinity, resting within a complete absence of any perceivable phenomenon. This is not a state of black unconsciousness, but an exceptionally alert awareness that perceives absolute vacuity. The mind rests in a state of complete readiness, an ultimate receptivity that requires no content to be perfectly fulfilled. You inhabit the irreducible core of existence that cannot be negated, because it is the very space within which the concepts of something and nothing manifest, the frontier of paradoxical awareness. At the absolute peak of conditioned existence, your consciousness stabilizes on the final boundary lithosphere of neither perception nor non-perception, known as Nevasananasanayatana. This state is so refined that it challenges the very categories of existence and non-existence. Perception has become so transparent that it can no longer be defined as an activity, yet awareness remains too pristine to be called non-percipient. You exist balanced upon a razor's edge between being and non-being, a state of perfect suspension where the individual identity has completely faded, leaving only the faintest whisper of a boundary separating the soul from the absolute unconditioned, the ultimate awakening. Freedom beyond the map. As your experiential journey through the 31 realms reaches its absolute completion, a singular, revolutionary understanding stabilizes within your awareness. You perceive that every single tier of this massive cosmic architecture, from the deepest contractions of density to the highest formless abstractions, is ultimately an impermanent modification of one undivided consciousness. Every realm requires conditions for its maintenance, Every heavenly sphere depends on the momentum of positive intent, and every formless state requires focused concentration. All of them are transient states arising within the mirror of eternal awareness. With this realization, the mind experiences the ultimate shift, the breakthrough known as Nibbana, or the complete cessation of the cycle of becoming. This is not a relocation to a 30-second realm, nor is it an annihilation into a blank void. Nibbana is the complete radical uprooting of the three internal poisons: greed, hatred, and delusion that fuel the entire engine of rebirth and universal exploration. When the frantic desire to acquire experience vanishes, when all resistance to reality dissolves, and when the illusion of absolute separation is exposed as a mere theatrical play, the momentum that projects the various realms simply ceases. The mind discovers its true, unconditioned nature, that which has never been born, and therefore can never die, that which has never been bound, and therefore requires no liberation. You recognize that you were never a prisoner within the 31 realms. You were the very consciousness within which the entire drama manifested. This understanding does not withdraw you from the world, but allows you to participate within it with an absolute, unshakable freedom. Whether awareness manifests within a human frame, a celestial light body, or a formless abstraction, it remains anchored in the timeless peace of its own true identity. The map of the 31 realms functions as a practical instrument for your immediate human existence. It reveals that your current human moment is an exceptional, rare gift, the perfect operational balance point from which ultimate liberation can be realized. Every choice you make in your daily life, every intention you cultivate, and every response you choose in the face of challenge is a functional vote for your ongoing destiny. Your relationships become sacred fields of practice, where you assist fellow travelers in navigating their own karmic patterns. Death is redefined not as a tragic conclusion or an unknown abyss, but as a natural graduation ceremony, a transition between classrooms in an infinite universe dedicated to the awakening of mind. As you rest in this expansive understanding, let the cosmic perspective infuse your being with an unshakable peace. You are like water, capable of assuming the form of any container, whether an ice cube in density or a cloud in expansion, while never losing your fundamental nature as pure water. Dedicate the clarity gained through this exploration to the welfare of all conscious entities across every tier of existence. May every being experiencing contraction find relief from hostility. May every mind guided by instinct awaken to choice. May every spirit of lack discover internal abundance. May every competitive heart find secure peace. And may all beings across the vast universe realize their true nature as the unconditioned, boundless and eternally free awareness. Gate parasam gate bodhisvaha. Gone, gone, gone beyond, completely gone to the source of peace. Enjoy your deep, restful sleep.